Yay, more bubbles. Hello again, folks. It's your girl Ego Dram. Bubble this motherfucker. Nobody hates bubbles. And there's no more bubbles. Do you remember earlier on, a few months ago, when I said that a colleague of mine and I had applied for a touring exhibition grant, which unfortunately we were rejected for? Well, part of the application process for that grant involved later on receiving evaluations and responses from the volunteer judges, so to speak. Basically, these are professional art critics, and I knew that this was going to be a thing that was going to happen eventually when I applied for the grant. Critiques and criticism is kind of, it comes with the territory if you work in the fine arts. It's a necessity, really, because if you don't know where you're messing up, or if you're not open to suggestion, you never really improve. While it's true that your creative process is distinctly your own, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be open to learning how to refine it or improve it. Now, growing up being the art geek as a teen, you're kind of used to your peers, your classmates, your teachers telling you, oh, you make such amazing work. You'll definitely be one of the pros one day or something, or I have such high hopes for you. And they set these really high expectations because they know that you're talented. And then you get thrown in the mix with, at art school, getting thrown in the mix with other people my age who've probably been told the same thing their entire upbringing. It's a little intimidating at first. But eventually you just have to realize, look, there's going to be people out there that are better at this than you are, or who can do things that you can't do, and that's okay. Competition doesn't need to be spiteful, but the fine arts are pretty competitive in ways a lot of people wouldn't really think of. Critique and criticism is going to happen, and usually it's not coming from a malicious talking down to you, staring down your nose at the peasant outsider artist kind of thing. I really hate the term outsider artist. It's their job to evaluate your skill level, how well you do what you do, and in some instances, whether or not they feel that you have a place in, or your work has a place in their establishment or their curation or their collection. That having been said, let's get into the response email that the Artist 360 people sent me. Hello, my real name. This is their real name. Artist Service Program Officer at Mid-America Arts Alliance. As promised, I'm sharing your Artist 360 Practicing Artist application feedback below. Note that if you applied in more than one category, you will receive a separate email for each. This written feedback was required from all panelists, and I've compiled all feedback from each of the panelists who reviewed your application. I hope that this feedback is useful for you and that it will guide you in future application processes. And then the rest of the email up until a certain point is just listing upcoming events. All right. This is gonna hurt. All right, first critique. I recommend the applicant continue building upon their artistic practice to establish connections within the communities. The applicant has an understanding of the material, however, I recommend that the applicant develop written material, such as the budget, with more details to provide a better context of project goals. I recommend the artist apply for other MAAA programs, such as Artists Incorporated, so that they can build their relationships with peers. Okay. I think that that's completely fair, because socializing and interacting with other human beings has been an issue with me for a long time, a very long time, actually. I'm just not very good at it. I'm not very good at verbally explaining things in a general sense at all. And when it comes to face-to-face conversations with people, with gallery owners, with other artists, with curators and collectors, I get nervous and I just blah. Yeah, you know what? That's a fair critique, and one that's well-founded. Also, as far as developing written material, as far as artist statements, budgets, and whatnot, like if you put a paintbrush in my hand, or a China marker, or heck, even sculpting tools, I will try, and I will least have an idea of what to do. I know what I'm doing. If you put a blank Excel window in front of me, like spinny buffering rainbow wheel will pop up inside my brain because I will not know what the fuck to do with it. The visual arts aspect of the visual arts, I'm very well familiar with. It's the stuff that goes on in the background that I don't have a whole lot of experience with. Very engaging images. I will include screenshots of what I can in this video. Very engaging images. Technical mastery is demonstrated through examples provided, as well as good idea of the intent of the work. A focus on bringing art to a new audience and topics about accessibility among the working class, particularly with this type of meaningful and captivating imagery, is a worthy endeavor. I believe this artist should be granted funds for their work, and we'd be an asset to the cohort. I assume the end they're talking about my colleague. Well, that was very heartwarming to hear, because that's more or less what I hope to do with my art. Is I tend to use a lot of visceral and often dark imagery to discuss controversial and dark topics, like war, on account of me being a veteran. One of the paintings I did was about the prison industrial complex in America, and other dark subject matter. That's something that I'm quite fond of doing. I'm glad to hear this piece, not necessarily so much as that to flatter my person, but because I think this panelist got exactly what it was I was hoping to do. Next piece. Their artwork and themes explored are compelling, disturbing, and to the point. There is a lot within the paintings historically and politically. I believe they are at a point where they are not only developing their artistic voice, but also a community. However, at this time, I'm not sure if the 2024 cohort wouldn't be too soon in their career. I see a lot of room for development and growth on the themes presented. Some notes below. Goals of the project are vague and not detailed. Timeline has no future deadlines or timeframes for considerations. Parentheses, what are you doing next? There is a mention of wanting to form a community, but not how the Artist 360 program may impact your time and what you can bring to the table. Budget is a good start, but where are the other sources of income? Consider not only the expenses, brackets, don't forget about labor costs you need to be paid, but also income from sales, social media, third-party job. P.S. I think image generation, AI, may be interesting to see with how you can compose and generate ideas. Keep painting. The subject of AI in the arts is a very contentious one. It's an ongoing conversation that is worth having. Some realms of the fine arts seem to be convinced that it's absolute evil incarnate and should be steered clear of, whereas other realms of the arts think that, yeah, there is potential for abuse with AI, like with Midjourney and such, but that the technology itself is actually very interesting and that interesting things can be done with it. I'm not so much afraid of AI art, but I also have no training whatsoever in any digital media, not for lack of trying. So I wouldn't know what to do with it. Like, put a couple of words through Midjourney and see what it comes up with and trace it. I don't think that this particular person meant any ill, and I'm not insulted by what they said. I guess I'm not understanding what it is that they're asking me to do here. Last piece. It's a relatively short one. Your artist statement and work samples are very cohesive, and the samples do translate, in a way, some ugly truths of our institutions. I recommend adding more verbiage to explain your work samples so that the audience can understand your point of view better. Also, not wrong. Touching back on, I'm not very good at verbally explaining things. That's why I try to let the artwork do the bulk of the talking for me. I've kind of always referred to my creative process as quote-unquote the noise in my head, to borrow some song lyrics from the Downward Spiral album. And so what comes out on the canvas or on the paper is my best effort to translate it, so to speak. I recommend adding more verbiage to explain your samples. That is a good piece of advice. And since verbal communication is something I struggle with anyway, I suppose that's one area that I do need to work on. Oh, yet another reason to continue working on that. Well, I'm somewhat relieved. I think most of this feedback was accurate. Of course, I know that critique and criticism is a crucial part of working in the realm of the arts. I still get nervous about it because my professors and colleagues in art school were a bit more brutal and condescending, so I guess that early experience kind of put me off for a long time to actually seriously trying to engage a career in the arts. But the community here in Northwest Arkansas seems a lot less sales driven and more about actually building a community and a scene, which I think is helps make a big difference between in terms of getting feedback that's just, you suck, you're not good enough, you don't have what it takes, versus, hey, you're awesome at this, but here's some things I think you could do better and I'd like to work with you, kind of thing. That went a lot better than I thought it would. Like I said, at the end of the day, your creative process is your own. But feedback from your peers is crucial to improving and developing and refining that creative process. And not everyone's gonna like your work, and that's okay. I still feel like I got something valuable out of hearing from these panelists, and it wasn't as ouch as I was initially worried it was going to be, so I will take their words and advice under consideration. Yeah, maybe I will apply for something else locally in the future, but for now, I do have other things that I have to do, so enjoy going about the rest of your day. Here, have some bubbles on the way out. And I hope you'll join me again in the future. Bye-bye.